Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
South Carolina's recovery from the worst flooding it has ever seen took a few steps backward today as even more rain came down. An inch fell in just 15 minutes. 21 have been killed, 228 roads and 107 bridges are closed, and 20 dams have failed. The National Guard is now handing out buckets of emergency supplies.
The homemade weapon is a new generation missile that is controllable unit until it hits its target. And the report does not say, however, when nor where the test was carried out. And this is the first missile test by Iran since early 2014 and the first time since the historic nuclear deal signed by Iran and the world powers in July. The country already has surface-to-surface missiles capable of reaching as far as Israel and U.S. military bases in the region.
More than 12,000 refugees have entered eastern Austria in the past 36 hours. Police say over 8,500 people entered the country through the Nickelsdorf crossing point with Hungary on Sunday. This was followed by another 3,700 overnight. The total is higher than in recent days, with daily totals over the previous week averaging around 5,500. The vast majority of them seek to travel onwards to Germany and elsewhere. Police say the increase follows a recent rise in numbers entering Macedonia from Greece on their way northwards through Serbia, Croatia, and Hungary. But the number is not a record. Last month, as many as 12,000 to 14,000 entered the country daily.
The Turkish government says ISIL is the prime suspect for Saturday's deadly attacks in Ankara. Funerals were held for some of the 97 people who lost their lives in the bombings. Hundreds are still in the hospital. What was supposed to be a peace rally has left the capital city in chaos. Now questions and the blame game.
2 days after the deadliest attack in Turkey's modern history, protests took place all across the country. In Ankara, not far from the suicide bombing, demonstrators marched and chanted anti-government slogans. One doctor who was among the first responders on Saturday stated that the number of people killed is likely going to increase.
Tensions are high at the moment here at the hospital in Ankara, while many of the victims' families are waiting anxiously for the latest updates on their relatives.
Relatives are furious at the Turkish government, claiming there weren't enough security measures at the rally, demanding an end to violence between Kurdish separatists and the government. We spoke to the fiancé of one victim injured during the blast.
The government did this with its own hand. If such an attack can take place in Ankara, the government is to blame. I think they are responsible because they did not take any security precautions.
Turkey's prime minister announced 3 days of national mourning. People are paying tribute to the dead and wounded by placing carnations at the site of the bombings. The country still plans to hold parliamentary elections in 3 weeks. It's unclear what impact the attack will have on the voting, but many are wondering if it can take place in the middle of the capital, how safe will voters feel when going to the polls?
The Russian Defense Ministry says its warplanes hit 63 Islamic State targets in Syria on Sunday, including military bases, ammunition storages, and training camps in central and northern Syria. A Russian Defense Ministry spokesman said at a press conference that ISIL militants are running short of ammunition and some have had to withdraw from combat.
Russia's Defense Ministry has released 3 videos showing what they say to be bombs hitting targets across various regions in Syria. The ministry has stated that military airplanes have carried out 55 attacks in Syria in the past 24 hours and hit 53 Islamic State targets there. Forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad have recaptured territory thanks to Russia's interventions, pushing back on rebel advances made earlier this year.
Iraq's defense ministry has released video footage which claims to show fighter jets bombing Islamic State targets in Iraq. Authorities say 7 airstrikes were carried out by coalition forces against ISIL positions, 5 of them in Ramadi. 3 separate airstrikes by Iraqi forces targeted militant facilities in West and North Baghdad. A statement accompanying the video said the airstrikes inflicted heavy losses in men and equipment on the extremist group.
Palestinian men armed with knives and a gun have killed at least 3 people and wounded several others in a string of attacks in Jerusalem and a Tel Aviv suburb. Several others were wounded on Tuesday, declared by Palestinian groups as a day of rage. 2 Palestinians shot and stabbed passengers on a Jerusalem bus, killing 2. Minutes later, another Palestinian rammed his car into a bus stop in the center of Jerusalem, then got out and began stabbing pedestrians, killing at least 1 and wounding several. 6 Israelis and 27 Palestinians have died in almost 2 weeks of street attacks and security crackdowns. The main Palestinian factions declared a day of rage on Tuesday across the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. Previously, the leaders of Israel's Arab community had called for a commercial strike in their towns and villages. The now daily stabbings have raised speculation that Palestinians could be embarking on another uprising.
5 separate attacks that left 3 Israelis dead and dozens of others wounded. As a result, Israel's Security Cabinet met in an emergency session for a second time within days to decide how to staunch this flow of ongoing violence between the sides. Within the Palestinian sector, the day of rage did continue. It went on with protests throughout the West Bank and along Israel's border with Gaza, with protesters, hundreds of them, breaking through the security fence between Israel and Gaza. I am in East Jerusalem. You can hear the helicopter overhead patrolling this area. All 5 Palestinian attackers are from East Jerusalem. Palestinian leaders are pointing an accusatory finger at Israel's leaders, saying they're responsible for the ongoing cycle of violence.
We hold the Israeli government entirely responsible for the war crimes against our people and for the wave of violence, chaos, extremism, and bloodshed.
Despite accusations and repeated implementation of new measures and attempts to curb the cycle of violence, this cycle continues.
Violence has been escalating between outraged Palestinian protesters and the Israeli forces in East Jerusalem and the West Bank for 3 weeks now over the restrictions imposed by Israel on the entry of Muslim worshippers to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, resulting in dozens of dead and injured on both sides.
Simply, we have had enough. We have been patient for the past 66 years, and now is our time to stand up and defend ourselves. If you want to know the reason, it's only in one word: occupation. We have had enough.
If the Israeli side thought that we will fear the live and rubber bullets, they are mistaken. We will not stop until we feel some justice, until we Palestinians are granted our rights as humans. 22 years of negotiations did not bring us peace or freedom. So it's time for the people of Palestine to rise up.
A few days back, President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, has ordered his security forces to take measures to maintain calm. However, the Palestinian police were not able to contain the angry protesters. In the same context, enthusiasm has drawn dozens of youths in Gaza to approach the no-go areas at the border with Israel, leading to the highest death toll since Israel ended its last summer war against the Strip. Nuharazin, CCTV, Gaza.
2 rockets have hit the Russian embassy in Damascus as several hundred people gathered to express support for Moscow's air war in Syria. These rockets were fired from the eastern edges of the capital where Islamist rebels are entrenched. In the meantime, the Russian Defense Ministry said Monday that its warplanes launched 55 airstrikes during the previous 24 hours, hitting 53 Islamist State targets in Syria They claim their hits include a massive transfer station and an ammunition depot in Selma, which is in the northwestern part of the country. Now, the Russian military said ISIL militants have suffered a heavy blow and are now hiding in residential areas. The military says that the air raids by Russia are being conducted based on data collected by Russia, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, who together established an information sharing center with high accuracy equipment. In the meantime, the Syrian ambassador to Russia said nearly 40% of ISIL's infrastructure has been deployed in Russian airstrikes.
This footage posted on social media is said to be of Syrian rebel fighters allegedly carrying out attacks against government troops in Hama.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
The fighters can be seen firing missiles and machine guns at their targets, which reportedly are barracks of official soldiers. The footage also reveals what is said to be the aftermath of airstrikes, thought to have been carried out by Russian warplanes. Officials have previously said the Syrian army were preparing an offensive of its own, backed by Iranian soldiers and Russian jets.
Russia's role in Syria has also propelled Iran's involvement in the country. A regional official and Syrian activists say Iranian and Hezbollah fighters have been pouring into Syria by the hundreds in recent days. It is the first confirmation of Iranian fighters taking part in Syrian combat operations. This comes just days after Iran test-fired a new long-range missile, potentially violating a UN agreement. Now the Iranian government is openly talking about a series of underground tunnels used to store missiles. This week, Iranian state TV aired footage of a secret missile base saying the missiles were ready to be fired in case of an attack on the country. The broadcast said the facility is one of hundreds of underground missile bases scattered across the country.
Russia's current operations in Syria show Vladimir Putin has been quickly modernizing his country's military over the last several years. And as Ephraim Graham reports, only now is the rest of the world getting to see it.
After 2 weeks of air and missile strikes in Syria, a Russian Defense Ministry official says its combat jets destroyed militant facilities near Aleppo, where explosives for suicide bombers were being made. And the New York Times reports actions like that show Vladimir Putin has upgraded and modernized Russia's military much more than Western intelligence and military officials had realized. The paper says Putin is showcasing his ability to conduct operations beyond his country's borders with a public demonstration of new weapons, tactics, and strategy. And Russia isn't only flexing its muscle with advanced hardware. The country has deployed field kitchens and even singers and dancers to entertain the troops. Some American analysts say it's a sign that Moscow is in this one for the long haul. Russia's growing push to prop up Syria's government is raising new scrutiny and questions about the CIA's secret support of Syrian rebels fighting President Bashar Assad, and just how far it will go to take on Putin's allies. And it seems the U.S. won't go very far.
To bring to bear to this effort.
White House spokesman Josh Earnest told reporters Tuesday, countering Russia's involvement in Syria doesn't rate nearly as high on the scale as battling ISIS. And voters are responding to the actions of Russia's and America's leaders. The latest Fox News poll shows 53% think Russian President Vladimir Putin has the upper hand in Syria, and only 22% disagree. And when it comes to President Obama, 52% say he is weak and indecisive as a leader, and only about a third call him strong and decisive.